welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Mindful Living with your host, Sarita. Now, today we are diving deep into a topic that many of us overlook: how neglecting ourselves physically, emotionally, and mentally can have profound effects on our health. Now, imagine this: you are pushing yourself to keep everything together: your career, your relationships, your responsibilities. But one day, your body forces you to stop. And this is exactly what happened to our guest today, Sarita Johan. Known as the Oracle in business and life, Sarita has over 3 decades of experience in executive coaching and business leadership. But despite her success, life had a way of teaching her one of the hardest lessons: that ignoring your well being can lead to complete breakdown physically, mentally, and emotionally. And today, on this episode of Mindful Living, she'll be sharing her deeply personal journey of snapping her femur during one of the most turbulent periods of her life, when everything from her marriage to her business was on the brink of collapse. And that moment became the wake up call that led her to rebuild her life, aligning business with personal well being. So, listeners, if you have ever felt like you are running on empty, or that stress is taking a toll on your health, on your emotional health, this conversation is definitely for you. So, with that, Savita, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor having you with us.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction.
Yeah, reality is almost always harsh. Sometimes, with the greatest difficulties, uh, get to we get that reality check. As you have shared that your snapped femur wasn't just a freak accident, but it was a sign from your body. So can you walk us through what was happening in your life at that time, if it's okay for you?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess it's not a very uncommon story of the perfect life, let's say family, business, marriage, and along the way, I guess with the responsibilities that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment in my life where I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Life had just taken a very big pace, and juggling so many different things, I realized that I was actually not in a good space. I just didn't know where to go, what to do to actually fix that. So instead of, I guess, addressing and seeking some external help, I decided that I was going to push myself even further. So I was getting like these little health scares, like, little bits and pieces, nothing too extreme, nothing too major.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was saying to myself quite regularly was like, how do I get out of my life? How do I change things? I wish I could do something differently. And
Mm-hmm.
so my belief is that my body was giving me the signals and I wasn't listening until one day it decided that it was going to literally sit me on my bum. And I spontaneously snapped my femur. So I was out for lunch with my business partners and I got up.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little bit of an argument, I guess. And I mentioned I was going to the ladies and would return and continue the conversation. And as I got up, I took 2 steps and my femur, which is the biggest bone in your body, it's on the thigh, it just completely snapped. And that started, I guess, the exploration and realization and having to take time out to realize what had been happening and the neglect I had allowed and not addressing what was going on to be really explored.
Mm-hmm. And life can be so unexpected. And when when you look back, um, do you think your body was warning you before the break happened? I mean, were there subtle signs that you ignored?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
I knew what, like, mentally I knew what I needed to do, or maybe in my thinking mind, I thought I knew what I had to do. My heart was telling me something else. My gut was definitely talking to my heart space. And
Mhm.
yes, but the mind was overriding it. It was like, you can do this. We just don't have to, we won't focus on this part. You just keep pushing yourself. You just make sure that you're there for everybody else and don't take any moment or time out for yourself to actually
Mhm.
look at what was going on. So, back to your question, my body definitely gave me signs along the way, which I completely ignored because my thinking mind would override it.
Mm. Well, that I guess this should be really eye-opening for our listeners as well. So now coming to healing. Um, so of course, we do are aware about that there's definitely a connection between mind, body. In fact, mind, body, and spirit. And
Mm.
did you mention that even after the break, healing didn't come easily because you weren't mentally facing what was happening? So
Yes.
how did your emotional and mental state affect your physical recovery?
Look, initially, I didn't really, I still, even after the break, I still wasn't looking at what I needed to look at. So, for
Mhm.
another, I guess, 7 months, I had no growth of my bone. So, I had no healing.
Okay.
And I was very dependent on other people. I was still, 2 weeks after I snapped my femur, it's so ridiculous. I went back into the boardroom and was running the business that I was in partnership with, which was just ridiculous. But I just didn't want to face the consequences. I just wanted to show everybody that I was superwoman and I could override everything because that's what I was so used to do. And of course, once again, the plans that I had didn't align. The universe had different things for me in store. And so, 7 months after I had the break, I still didn't have any union of the bone, which meant
Mhm.
that my surgeons were getting quite concerned because I was still on crutches and I didn't
Mhm.
have the strength in my bones to recover. And that's when I started, I guess, getting glimpses of that I needed to make. There was a bigger game at play here, and that I actually needed to make some decisions in my life. And so I was very fortunate that I was invited to do a special clinical trial, which was stem cell treatment. And they, I was one of 10 people in Australia that was tagged for the program. But I then knew, and I don't know where it came from. It wasn't that I had thought about it that much, but it was almost like it dropped into my headspace where I could
Mhm.
clearly hear the voice saying, "Hey, you've got to make a decision because if you're going to do this, you need to cut the cords that you need to cut." And I made that decision very clearly. It was very tough, but once I did it and I had the stem cell treatment, I had the operation, things were changing. And that's what set me up
Mhm.
on my new path because then I realized, like, oh my goodness, my mind is so powerful, but I need to be able to communicate the three layers in a certain way. And how I'm
Mhm.
saying it now, that's not how I was looking at it back then. This is like 16, 17 years ago.
Oh,
But it
okay.
definitely got me on my path, and it was a very painful process in terms of there were lots of things that, got basically broken down and completely destructed, but it was needed because it was either that or I wasn't going to be here for the long term. And not sure whether you're a mum or people listening, when you are a
Mhm.
parent, there are just it brings a complete different level of responsibility, and I
Yes,
couldn't do
I
that.
understand.
Couldn't do that to my kids. So I
Oh.
had to make a courageous choice and be brave
Mhm.
and step into
Mhm.
that and say, I'm choosing for me. I have to choose for me because otherwise my cup will be empty and I'll be no good to anyone else.
True, true, absolutely true. I know there are so many layers there. I mean, so many meanings because although I haven't haven't have yet uh, been gifted the gift of motherhood, but when I see my mother and
Mm,
um, back at that time, I was not completely aware about how much um, sacrifice and how much selfless love is there. Now I somehow realize that, it's so, so, so crucial, especially for a person who's a caregiver or a parent, uh, and also, running a business or, having a very high stressful professional life. It is still important to give importance to self-care because, as you mentioned, you cannot, if the vessel is empty, you cannot just pour into it. So, uh, when we talk about self-care, Sarita, uh, in the context of business, many people in high performance careers, they feel guilty about taking time off, themselves. Although they work with full passion, they seek that fulfillment through their work. But if they are taking time off, they always feel that guilt or that FOMO, fear of missing out. So how do you help um, them shift that mindset? And also, what are the biggest lessons that you have learned about self care from your coaching experience?
Yes, I guess there's a couple of parts to it. I
Mm,
feel that from my own experience and how I teach and coach and consult people nowadays, it is actually a non-negotiable. I think we are very strange when it comes to how we put things into compartments. Like, this has to be here, you do a little bit of self-care that looks like this, and then you do your professional life, and then the reality is that everything is interconnected. So when we're not feeding one part, it's like driving a car, right? If you're not putting the right petrol in, it's not going to perform to the highest potential. And it's no different for us as human beings. So we have, I feel we have been conditioned in a way that we just can't seem to be able to have it all. Where my belief is that you can have it all. However, you need to be able to look at things that you can do, and they're not. I think the misconception is people think about it in a big scheme of things. So when we talk about self care, that could be having a massage or reading a book, but
yeah.
the amount of time that we allocate to that can sometimes be unsustainable in our minds. So what I teach people is like having little snippets of it. So doing 5 minutes of breath work or walking to the station where you make coffee or go for a walk outside or whatever is available to you in your environment to just start small. We have this intensity within us that we want to do it like hours on end. And for people in high performance teams or people that have businesses, that is not always available. But what I do know is by doing little bits consistently and committing to that, that makes a
Mm,
big difference. Truly, it's not about the amount of time, it's the quality of time you spend on yourself. And sure, if you can do bigger gaps, amazing. But as a starting point, we can all do it. We all have, if we really look at it, 5 to 10 minutes a day that we can spend on ourselves without feeling
yeah.
guilty or feeling like we're selfish.
True, true. And I guess this is much more relevant for uh, parents, entrepreneurs who are parents as well, as you mentioned just a few minutes back. But it comes with a different set of challenges when you have something as um, joyful yet sometimes stressful as parenting. Um, Also, Sarita, um, you completely redesigned your life from the
Mm.
scratch after this experience, walking away from a high profile career, then immersing yourself in personal development. So, how did you navigate that transition? And then, what advice do you have for those who are afraid to start over?
That's I think in my case, have I didn't feel I had much of choice. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is my children, when this all took place, were early teenagers. So from 12 to, I've got three children from 12 to 15. And so when this occurred, I basically, when everything collapsed, let's talk about it in that way, I also lost connection with my eldest daughter. So my eldest daughter and I weren't talking. My son was at boarding school. My youngest daughter moved overseas. And I then ended up from being this person that was so instrumental in people's lives. I became my own person. I had to stand on my own 2 feet. And that was really, really tricky. So this whole process of, I guess, realizing that there's only one person that is truly important, and that is you. And from that space, I then started to get curious because for me, that was a real rock bottom. My children are my everything, and, it's children first and then my business.
Yeah.
And when that was taken away and the business was no longer there, it was like, well, how much worse can it get? I've had my health. I don't have the business. I don't have the kids. What else can happen? There is, in my mind, it couldn't get any worse than that. And I think that was my rock bottom. And it allowed me then to, things came starting to come on my path because I was like, okay, tell me what I need to do next because I don't know where to go next. And so these opportunities started arriving on my pathway, and that became the self development space. I started learning about myself. I started learning about the things that had occurred in my life. But rather than, I guess, making it about that story, I was looking at it from, okay, so what can I do with this? How can I turn this around into something that, yes, that has happened and it's terrible, but how can I transform that into something else? What do I actually want to do? And that's what really started the change within me, which then rippled out to my environment. And my children all of a sudden started seeing me as this complete different being and started coming back into my life. But I had to do that self care first. It was like there was no other way than to do that because it would have not gotten better. Um, and so that included looking at what is it that I truly desired. And my gift has always been people knowing how to communicate with them, how to show them how they can be the best version of themselves and
Mhm.
accepting their imperfections. And that was always my game in business. And so I decided that that was the pathway I needed to take, but across more people, not just for one business and generating the profits and leaving it to that, but really looking after people and making them thrive, which then in return, makes me thrive as well. So it was a very that journey in itself took about 10 years. It wasn't like I flicked a switch and all of a sudden I arrived. And as you well know, it's never it's a never ending story. It's work in progress. But that's, I look back now and my kids are all adults now and we have those conversations around what was it like for them and what was it that got them back in my life. And they often say, and it's funny, they're in a similar space work-wise as I am, that that was the defining moment for them when they saw me looking after myself and choosing for me and then starting to rebuild my life. And, now they're my best friends and my biggest advocates. And we have an amazing relationship, but that really needed to happen.
Love
So
love to. That is so inspiring and such an uplifting transformation, Sarita. I think not only individually and personally, but as a family. I think it did more good than it could do bad. So of course, although it was your lowest point, but I think looking at the bigger picture, I think it really helped you reinvent yourself, rediscover yourself.
I agree. That's totally that's totally. And again, it's like anything, right? You summarize 10, 15 years, 17 years into a 2-minute conversation. The reality is that it does take commitment, and it's not linear. You get your days where you
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm 5 steps ahead. And then the next day you're back on your bum and you go like, what happened? I thought I was there yet. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, it just, but it's the, I guess again, it made me a much better person, and I can now, going back to that defining moment when I looked in the mirror and I went like, who am I and what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I can
mm,
generally say that, when I wake up in the morning, I'm excited about life, and doesn't mean that I don't have challenges, but having that sense of that I do know. And sometimes I forget. I've been away for 5 weeks. Sometimes I forget to look after myself, but
mhm.
I can pick up on it very quickly and go like, oh, stop, take some time out, do some breath work, or go for a walk, or stay away from the computer. Just be present. And I think all those little elements, they do then become that, that flow that we so often talk about and speak to.
Sure, sure. And before we wrap up, Sarita, um, since you learned the lesson the hard way, uh, do you think business leaders or entrepreneurs, anyone, let's just not give a specific role, but especially for them, uh, do should they wait for something to happen, or should they be proactively, you know, or should they proactively start taking the necessary steps right now? Because sometimes, changes can be very hard to embrace. It can
Mm.
make you feel discomfort, it can make you feel frustrated sometimes as well, because in case of high achievers, performers, sometimes it can really, really get them into that vicious loop. So, what's your opinion on this?
That's a really good question. I think
Mhm,
we seem to be, as beings, a bit stubborn. We can, I think, if we were able to override, not put as much emphasis on our thinking mind, but really start listening to our bodies, that would make a big
mhm,
difference. It doesn't have to be that it's something happens that is so life changing or life threatening that it takes a lot of effort to get out. I feel that we've lost connection with ourselves, and that's what I teach people as well, in terms of energy. And I'm really embarking on a new direction in my career where I'm starting to realize that we need to stop overriding what we feel and what we sense, and be more in
mhm,
that energetic space, because that will give us and inform us a lot about what's going on. When our body is playing up, when we have an ache, or we're sore somewhere, that's a signal. And it's not to then ignore that and keep pushing through, but it's an opportunity to go have a look and like go like, oh, I've got a sore neck. Where did that come from? Or
mhm,
what is it telling me? How am I supporting myself in terms of my nutrition?
mhm.
Um, am I getting enough sleep? All the things that we know. But the thing is, when that is not knocking on our door, we will keep doing, because we're creatures of habit. We'll keep doing the same thing over and over again
Yeah.
until something happens, right?
Yes.
So, what I teach the executives that I work with is it's not a negotiable thing. It's not we do the business first and then we look at that. No, this is actually comes first. These are the things that you're going to choose from, that you're going to implement, that will give you energy and therefore allow you to thrive in your business. Now, it's not utopia, but the people that I get to work with, their results are, and they know, as I do, when I'm off track,
Mhm,
how to get myself back on track. And I
mm,
think that's the thing. We need to drop a little bit more out of our heads into our heart space and go like, hey, something is going on here. We need to take a moment out and listen more to what those signals are. I think that would be my key message to your listeners.
beautiful, beautiful. Great, great, Sarita. So, if our listeners would wish to connect with you and explore more about your service, your resources, and also they would like to connect with you personally as well, how they can do that.
Yes, so they can find me on LinkedIn or go to my website, which is www.sjcoaching.com.au. And feel free to connect with me either on LinkedIn, or you can go to Instagram as well, which is SJ Coaching. Love to talk, love to share my resources for whomever. So if your listeners are interested in anything, I'm happy to send that through to them. And yes, thank you very much for having me.
Lovely, lovely. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Sarita, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the invaluable wisdom you have gained along the way. And I think uh, in your story is such a powerful reminder that our bodies keep score, and if we don't listen, they will force us to stop. So thank you so much.
Yes. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And for anyone listening who feels like they are at their breaking point, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally, you know that change is possible. And healing starts with awareness. And as Sarita has shown us today, it's never too late to redefine love. So, to connect with Sarita and learn more about her incredible work she does in coaching and business leadership, check out the show notes along with this episode. And as always, thank you to everyone for joining me on Mindful Living. If this episode connected with you, please subscribe, leave us a review. I'm sure to put someone who needs to feel this message. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it. Thank you.